All right, welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you live from Elsie's, and I'm shocked. This is one of our bigger crowds here at Elsie's, and I was a little worried with all the tornado sirens going off today, which I'm sure on the golf course you didn't hear, right? I assume?
I didn't hear any sirens, but it was windy, and if it blew over my push cart 3 different times.
Hey, what's that funnel?
Right, I actually had to call my son on the way here because I almost had what would have been a miracle finish on a hole. And it's a par 5 hole. It's a slope, pretty severe slope from back to front on the green. And the wind was howling back toward the fairway. And I hit my 3rd shot above the hole by about 6 feet. So I walk around to the back of the green and I stop to look at my putt from behind the green. And the wind was so strong that it started the ball rolling down the hill. So I had not yet marked the ball. I hadn't addressed the ball. And the ball starts trickling down the hill, and it almost went in. It was about 2 inches to the left of the hole, and it ended up going about 2 or 3 feet past. And I was like, it would have been an eagle if it would have gone in because I hadn't gotten to my ball yet. So the 10-second clock of waiting for it to trickle in wouldn't have started. And so I called Vinny just to say, like, would you have credited me with an eagle on it? And he, of course, argued that.
Well, there is a time limit.
Well, there is, except not if I'm walking from 100 yards away where my ball was.
I don't know. We'll have to get the PGA rule book.
Yeah,
it's like I'm assuming it was like Caddyshack, like one of the last scenes when it's absolutely
the wind
pouring
was just howling, and it was amazing though. My cart blew over at one point, almost fell in a pond, which was bad, and Ariana, who I was playing with, had to step away from a shot because as she's just about to take her swing, the wind almost knocked her over. That was as windy conditions as I've ever played in.
And there were tornadoes. That's why.
Were there really actually tornadoes?
Yes, there were tornadoes in the area.
Not in Stillwater.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
If there was, I didn't see it.
If it
but that would
hit your
explain
golf
why
court,
we couldn't figure out if the wind was going to the right or the left. If it was swirling, maybe that would explain it.
All right, welcome back to the Common Man Show. So we should start like every show with you just going over one of your golf, one of the holes. We don't know yet. We'll do a live show in June, at least one. We just don't know yet because I am leaving maybe as early as tomorrow night for a month. So for the Eastern Conference Final and then the Stanley Cup Final, this depends on next couple of days here. But so I don't know. We'll do at least one more show recorded this month, and then we'll do 4 in June, but 1 or 2 live shows. So stay tuned to that. Thanks as always to Trampled by Turtles for doing the intro and the outro for this pod. You know what? So I had an MRI yesterday, and they asked me what
for
music
what?
For my back.
Oh boy!
So anyway,
is this another self-diagnosed injury?
No,
like
I have
the self-diagnosed concussion from the Uber ride.
I have many.
Had to go to an emergency room because your calf hurt.
All right. So many issues back there. That's what the MRI was for, to diagnose. And they asked if I wanted Trampled by Turtles, and I felt like I was in our podcast minus the middle part where you have not freaking bother me for an hour. But it was I kind of was thinking as I'm listening to like Victory, which is the first song of this pod, come on, I'm in this tight hole that's like a coffin. I'm thinking to myself, this is actually more comfortable than having to be next to you during a podcast. That was literally something that went through my mind. Yep.
I should have just piped in.
Relaxing.
I should have piped in a few opinions into that MRI tube.
Yeah.
You can't get away now. So what was the result of the MRI?
I could show it to you. It's a lot of doctor jargon. I have many herniations and degenerative this and stuff that, Well,
I'm sure.
Again,
I mean,
the
think
pain
about
that you cause my
think
back.
About all the thumb activity over the years and the stress that puts on back muscles.
All right. So anyway, what were we talking about? I don't even know. But thanks to Trampled by Turtles. All right. Let's talk about, what do you want to talk about? By the way, we have a mic up here. Anybody that can come on up and ask a question at any point.
Well, we should talk about the playoff series.
Yeah.
They've been interesting. I think it's, Vinny and I were talking a little bit on the way in, and I think a couple things that jump out to me. And if we start in the West, first of all, the Central Division is a gauntlet. And you look at the 4 teams that were in the central pod of the playoffs. Minnesota obviously was not one of them, but those four, I mean, what battles those series have been. And I've talked before about that's why I love the format where you play within your division. And because those rivalries now will be St. Louis and Winnipeg will have a rival. This will last 3 or 4 years for them. Dallas and Colorado, same thing. And now Dallas and Winnipeg in this series. But they've just been wars. And it's been fun to watch. And some of the former Wild players who are a part of these teams, how big has Mikhail Granlund been in these playoffs? Nino's been great.
Interesting. You know the irony of this, though? It was that 2018 Winnipeg series that would spell the beginning of the end of that whole core. Coyle, Zucker, Granlund, and Nino.
That's true.
They had like 1 point in the entire series, and now Granny's getting a hat trick against Nino, and Nino's scoring against Granny, and it's just like,
how about
couldn't have done this 5-6 years ago?
Think about this fact that we talked all season. I felt Dallas was the most impressively structured team in the West. I thought their roster was the deepest. I thought it was the best built, and I thought they were the team to beat in the West because of it throughout the year. And now you think about the fact that in the playoffs, they've had 3 hat tricks by guys that weren't on their team until the trade deadline.
Yeah.
2 by Rantanen, 1 by Granlund. And I mean, it's amazing when you start with what they had to begin with and add those guys really at almost no cost. I mean, no cost for this year. The trade with Carolina, they did lose. There's some pieces that were of value that went the other way.
Well, how about just every team and all the impacts that they're getting from guys at the trade deadline, which you don't normally see. But you're looking at Marchand in Florida and Stankoven and
Carolina,
and Taylor Hall in Carolina.
Some of them, but Colorado might have a different opinion.
Yeah, that's
they
true.
mortgaged the future to bring in Coyle and Nelson, and they were out in the first round.
Yep, absolutely. I was one thing here we go with the negative Russo, but I was thinking watching like Edmonton, they're up 2-1. They have a dominant win against Vegas. Carolina up 2-1 against Washington, put their hands around the throat of Washington. And to me, that's a sign always of a good team is when you're the more desperate team up 2-1 in a series. And that's something the Wild never do. They're always up 2-1 a series and just come home and they don't, or on the road, and they just don't play that brand of hockey. And Foligno was talking about it when they were up 2-1 and his biggest disappointment of the series. And we can all look at, all right, game 5 should have been offsides and game 4 this. But the way they played from start to finish in game 4, he just felt wasn't assertive enough to win that. And I just think when you are the team ahead in a series and you could do what Carolina seems to do every single year and what Edmonton just did to both LA and Vegas, I think that's a sign of a really good team.
Well, except they were down. Edmonton was down 2 in the LA series,
right.
but your point's valid, except that we've got I think this year was different for Minnesota because game 4, they lost in overtime. It isn't like they came and laid an egg.
Right.
They didn't come out and put the hammer to them, but they lost an overtime game. And I think the one that stood out to me is St. Louis a couple of years ago when Minnesota was up 2-1. I think they were the better team in that series. St. Louis's blue line was decimated. And Craig Berube, I thought, made the great move. He switched goaltenders at that point. He juggled up all of his forward lines and said, I'm not going to wait until I'm down 3-1 to make a change. And they found a way to win game 4 where Minnesota had every reason to win that game. I don't remember. It was there was one defenseman for St. Louis that only played like 2.5 minutes in that game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they played Justin Falk like 36 minutes or something. And Nick Leddy played a ton. And they won the game that Minnesota, it was there for the taking, and the Wild would have been coming home up 3-1. That's the one that stands out to me where they didn't put the hammer to them. The Dallas series, even though Minnesota was up 2-1, I think Dallas was the better team in that series. So that one I dismiss a little bit, but the St. Louis series is one that I think is a perfect example of what you're talking about.
I just think sometimes too, like, and this is what really bothers me, especially in the way that Edmonton really outplayed Vegas and showed that they were very beatable. Is I just think that sometimes the Wild just mess around too much. I just thought, Talbot 2 years ago, 13 straight games with a point, and they just start flurrying game 1 and 2 and 3. Last in Dallas,
4, they didn't start Talbot until game 6 that series.
Right, actually, you're right. So 5 games in in the Dallas series, like Gustafson has this crazy double overtime win, and you start Fleury game 2. And it just seems like this series again, just the way the whole thing with Zeev and not sitting down Gustav Nyquist. And it just seems like at times they, if they get out of their own way and let the players play, I think that sometimes you can win these rounds.
I think sometimes they've been reluctant to make the bold move. And the bold move probably would have been to start Cam Talbot in that series against St. Louis. Even though Fleury had been the trade deadline acquisition, Talbot was just better down the stretch.
Right.
But they started
It shows
Fleury.
you that Fleury was promised something to waive as no trade.
In all likelihood. But the other thing was that then I just made the point about Berube. He's down 2-1 and switches goaltenders. Yeah. And I thought when Minnesota lost game 4 in that series, I would have come home and made the change then and gone to Talbot for game 5. Instead, they lost game 5 and then threw Talbot in for the first time in a week and a half to play game 6. Yeah. And I thought that was tough. I thought they were just a little bit reluctant to make some of those quick adjustment moves, but I don't know if I'd call it messing around. I mean, I don't think they were going into these series thinking like we've got the ability to just try whatever we want because it doesn't matter. I just think for some reason they've been a little, in this case, maybe a bold move would have been to take Nyquist out of the lineup and see what Liam Ogren had, or even just change the ice time for guys. And perhaps they were a little bit hesitant to do that just because of the fact that they felt they were playing well in this series. And the reality is, they probably, by and large, were the better team. They lost 4 one-goal games and won 2 blowouts.
Yep, outscored them in the series.
Right. So I think it probably had a little different feel, where if they had been blown out a couple times, then you probably make that change more easily. I don't know. And I think what's been interesting in this round, in the second round for Vegas, is that they were on the other end of some of the same stuff. They didn't get bounces that they got against the Wild in close games,
except for Leon Draisaitl scoring with
but remember the one the goal that tied it for Edmonton happened the same way. McDavid threw one in off of Petrangelo's skate, so that was the only reason that Edmonton had even been in the position they were. Hill doesn't make a save with the extra attacker and allows Edmonton to tie game 2 and then win it in overtime. I mean, those were just the plays that went their way in the Wild series. They went Edmonton's way in this series. And then, to Edmonton's credit, they played the last 2 games in a style that you just never see from them during the regular season, where they were heavy, they were physical, they were committed to defend. McDavid's blocking shots, and it just looked like I watched the game. It's like, are you really watching Edmonton here, or are you watching somebody like a St. Louis type team that came in feeling like they had to win 1-0? They just played the game the way they had to play in the playoffs, and they got it done.
Yeah, and I do think that we'll see a very committed Oilers team in this next round. I mean, I think McDavid realizes how close and how good this team can be to winning a Stanley Cup. And after what happened to them last year in Florida, forcing a game 7 after being down 3 and then losing, I think that we're going to see. I mean, just look at him after last night. Sniping at reporters. Like this was a guy that won yesterday to go to the conference final for the second year in a row, but you could just see he's got his game face on.
How about the situation in Toronto right now?
I was just going to bring that up.
And
could you imagine Mitch Marner today? I don't know if people like flip around Twitter, but oh my Lord, is he getting annihilated by people?
And justifiably so. Did you see the play that he's being crucified for? And this is a team that I think has taken on the personality of their fan base, where they won the first 2 games at home, went to Florida and got whooped twice. And you would have bet that they've already lost the series based on the way the fans in Toronto were reacting. And it almost felt like the team played game 5 with that same kind of mentality. Like it's already over.
Throwing jerseys on the ice, burning Marner jerseys.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's really, and now you have to wonder, I mean, is it really time now in Toronto to say this core will never win? Yeah. The way they played during the regular season with the coaching change this year, I really thought this might be a different story with the style they're playing. But man, it has not carried
Well,
over.
if they lose the series, Marner's gone, and which the only benefit of that is I'll never have to hear about a Wild fan asking me about Nyes' offer sheet again, because that will cement that that Nyes will be re-signed. But Marner is, I gotta think that he just wants out at this point, just to totally change of scenery and go to a place with less noise, and you almost can't win there just with all the eyes on him. And today it's just, I mean, people are now bringing up and blaming him that he didn't, that he's the one that blocked Rantanen from going to Toronto and all this stuff. And that's something that I'm sure that he's not thrilled that even got out. Which again, if you don't waive your no trade or no move, you have every right to do that. It was negotiating your contract. I mean, we saw that with Alex Goligoski here for 2 years. You have that right. It was given to you. That is in your contract. And but yet now everybody's blaming him because Rantanen is absolutely on fire. Everybody's blaming him for that. But to your point again on Toronto, you blow the 2 games in Florida, you come home, you're talking about reset, and then you don't even show up. I mean, that was not a fluke. They were worked in the first period for the second game in a row and just destroyed on home ice. Not a good situation.
And I don't know how they go win in Florida now. I can't imagine a scenario where they go win a game on the road in Game 6.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Stranger things have happened, but you're 100% right.
And then you'll be back covering hockey in Florida.
Yeah,
you used to cover the Panthers, I heard once.
Yeah, I will be. That'll be a fun. Although I will say, I covered that Carolina-Florida series 2 years ago, and I needed a pillow. Oh my God, was it tough? Like Carolina just could not score. Now Svechnikov had torn his ACL, and I forget, somebody else was hurt in that series. I think Nate just got hurt in that series. It just, it's not the greatest brand of hockey, but it wins. That's for sure. Got an interesting question at a local Starbucks yesterday from a fan that asked me, like, all right, Rossi, Nate, tell me one player on the Wild that nobody's thinking of that could be traded this summer that none of us are thinking of. Like, who's that one guy? If you had to answer this question, I'll tell you what I told this person. If you had to answer the question, tell me.
A trade, huh? Yeah, I mean, maybe Ryan Hartman would be the one that would come to mind.
Yeah, I think Brodin. I just have this feeling. Like, I think that Billy would like to create a little more cap space this offseason. I think he's the easiest tradable asset. You have Boyum coming. I just think that he's got no trade protection. And then we've talked about his durability. I just have this feeling that one of their core defensemen, and we know that can only be one of 2, meaning the captain, could be on the move this summer. I mean, totally conjecture, but this is this is the first thing that came to my mind when he asked the question.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I don't know. I don't know that there's another player likely to be moved. I mean, when you say if you have to pick one, I mean, to me, neither one of those guys are. I'd say it's a 10% chance at best that one of those guys gets traded.
If you traded a Broads, you can even go after like a Ryan Lindgren or something. Get like a different dynamic on.
Yeah, maybe.
line.
But I think one of the things that this year, and I know we've talked a lot about Brodin's injuries over the years, and a lot of them have just been the fluke nature: block a shot, break your foot.
Yeah, but that's not fluke. That's happening.
No, I mean it's happening.
Like,
but
it's
I'm
not
saying
like
it's not.
A fluke is taking a slap shot on your balls like Zuccarello did, and winding up living in the hospital for a week.
Yeah, but to me, that's the same as blocking one with your foot. Guys block shots with their feet all the time, and your foot doesn't always break.
One person does.
Well, but not always. And I'm saying that, like, it would be different if you were talking about a guy that has had a couple ACL surgeries where the odds of it coming back are significant. And I think when you look at Brodin with the fact that he goes into the Four Nations and he's starting on the first pair for Sweden, and now he's been great in the World Championships for Sweden again. And that's a lot of hockey for a guy that is supposedly not durable and should be out of gas at the end of a season. And he was playing a ton of minutes for the Wild down the stretch and in the playoffs, heavy minutes, playoff minutes. I don't know. I'm not as worried about his durability as you are, I guess.
Yeah. I am.
I know you are.
I mean, it's 20 to
You're
30
exactly
games a year.
as worried as you are.
Yeah, exactly. I just think there comes a point where maybe you have to make a move. I'm not saying it's that he should be traded. I'm just saying there's only so many people that could actually be a bold move that could actually get something,
Do you think you need a bold move?
Yeah, I do. Especially up front. I mean, I just think, and the reason why I say this, to get to the point of why Brodeen came to me is I just think that I like somebody in a couple of people have tweeted me that I pretty much threw water on every single potential move in our mailbag today. And the reason why it is because the free agent class is so lousy. Like, Bill Guerin says you don't want to make mistakes in free agency. Everybody available this offseason could be a mistake if you make the wrong move, like especially at the area where he wants to improve, and that's at center. And you look at every center that's available, Nelson very likely could be overpaid and overtermed, and we know that's the one they want. Bennett's going to have to be overpaid wherever he goes. Marner doesn't make a lot of sense. He's not exactly a center. Giroux probably wants to stay at home. If you look at there's not a lot of sexy centers. So I think that he's going to be able to go make that bold move in a trade. I just think that he's going to have to make trades.
Yeah, maybe
rather than free agency.
It's possible, but I also think he's made it clear he thinks Yurov's going to be here. I think when you look at their roster, if it's an addition of, and I agree with you on everything you said about Brock Nelson. To me, it's more a term issue than a per year issue with Nelson. If that term has to be 5 years, now that's a tough one.
Yeah.
If it's a shorter deal than that, I think the guy still has some gas in the tank, still has tread on the tires, so to speak. He can skate, and he brings what they've been saying they need, which is somebody to take some of the load off of Eriksson Ek, to be another larger body, bigger center, guy who can play against some of the other teams' best. That might be that's a bold enough move, I think, because what we saw in the playoffs is their superstars are ready to take the next step, in my opinion. Yeah, and you're not in the spot the Wild have been for a decade where they just haven't had that superstar scorer. They do now.
Yeah, and Brock could probably help a little bit in the faceoff circle. He's not elite there, but certainly penalty kill. Like, to me, those are the areas that Bill really needs to look at this offseason. Like, you cannot have another year where their penalty kill is as bad as they are. And there just comes a point where you got to look at the personnel you've been using. And I know, you know what I was watching about all these other teams? They all use superstars on their penalty kill.
And the Wild did down the stretch.
Yeah, well, one.
And that's why they were different.
Maybe you need to play Kaprizov out there. I mean, every other team plays their guys.
But remember, Kaprizov wasn't in the lineup until.
Right. But I mean, maybe there comes a point where you have to try him there. I mean, I see Draisaitl out there. I see Matthews. I see Marner. I see Nylander. There's a Reinhart, Barkov. There just comes a point where you continue. It's like you feel like, all right, if they're a bottom six forward, that you got to give them some sort of role if they're not on the power play. Who cares? If Trenyon came here on a 4-year deal and showed he can't kill a penalty, they finally took him off. So I don't think that you just have to give guys that are in your bottom six penalty kill time just to feel like they belong. I just think there comes a point where you got to figure out how to kill these penalties, and you're using the same guys every single year. And
I think that's what the change was down the stretch. They were, what were they, 8th in the league on the kill over the last month, and that was when Boldy started killing. Kaprizov was out of the lineup for most of that final month. So was Eriksson Ek. So they didn't really have another skill guy available to them to use down the stretch, and their kill was good enough. If they could kill at that level all season, that is good enough.
Right.
And maybe you see Kaprizov on it from time to time, but I don't know. I think if you throw Boldy and Eriksson Ek, Foligno was so good down the stretch on the kill. Gaudreau was pretty good on the kill. I mean, you've got some guys who can kill other than using Kaprizov and Zuccarello or guys like that.
I don't know if Gaudreau was very good on the kill when I look at his numbers, and he certainly couldn't win a draw on the kill. We have a microphone up here, by the way. If you want to come on up, just feel free to come on up. Trying to think. I talked to Brett McLean today about Ogren. I'll tell you about that conversation. Wild are very close to signing Danilo Yurov, so that will be happening. And Juracek is starting to feel really, really, I think, much, much better from his lacerated spleen, and he'll have a chance to make this team next year if he's not blocked by a veteran. The weather is warming up, and that means it's time to put your augers away and it's time to grab the boat. Let Onyx Fish help you find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your success. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. Onyx Fish also shows you hotspots, lake by lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game. If you're looking for a refreshing THC drink, well, check out Giggly. It tastes like your favorite cocktail with no aftertaste and just pure, bold flavor. It's made with real fruit juice and all natural ingredients. It's a Minnesota-made gem. You can find it at liquor stores and Quick Trip locations across Minnesota or get it shipped nationwide. Plus, with a new low pricing and low-calorie options, it's the perfect guilt-free sip. Try Giggly today. Question.
You brought up Brodeen playing a lot of minutes in the Four Nations face-off and our other players playing there. Why is it that the NHL's so excited about this and even Bill Guerin and owners are excited when it's hurting their teams? We saw that with Matthew Tkachuk being out at the end of the season. Like, as a fan, I'm not looking forward to the Olympics because I'm worried my players are going to get hurt for the Wild.
I mean, there's multiple reasons, and they are going to be doing this every other year, where they have between the World Cup and the Olympics. I mean, one is money, revenue. That's the obvious reason, and two is growing the game. I mean, I covered the Four Nations. The brand of hockey was unbelievable, but there 100% was a price to be paid. I mean, Eriksson Ek came back hurt. Clearly, they're not identifying that. They actually don't know when or how he got hurt, but he came back hurt. You mentioned Matthew Tkachuk, there's Shea Theodore, there's a ton. And you're right. In today's hockey too, the way these guys play, it's so much easier to get hurt. It's so different than even, when Tavares got hurt at the Olympics.
Right. But to be clear, GMs and teams are not excited about it. And that's why for years, this was a negotiation. Players wanted to go to the Olympics, and the teams in the league who don't make money off of the Olympics, but that's why they were opposed to it. That's exactly why. Now, the Four Nations was different. It was run by the league. They did profit from that. The growing the game element it's hard to put a price tag on that. But now after you've had the Four Nations and the excitement is up for the Olympics again, but there's the teams in the league, they've never been excited about the players going to play in the Olympics.
Yeah.
They're willing to allow it, but they're not excited about it.
Right. And that is like the CBA will be done very soon. In fact, I don't even think it's like they want to announce the CBA at the Stanley Cup final. I think it's going to be done before that. And one big reason is that type of concession. This is the two sides have never gotten along this well. Gary Bettman and Marty Walsh have an incredible working relationship. They're working constantly on this next collective bargaining agreement, but a big part of that is this sort of give back. But in the Four Nations and all the international hockey that they're putting on the calendar, then through I think 2032 right now, is all one big reason that the league is compromising. But yeah, as a fan, it sucks when Eriksson Ek comes back and he's out. The wear and tear. There's a reason why guys like Boldy and Faber, and there's a reason why a lot of the USA hockey guys have taken time off from the World Championship. One is, if you notice the World Championship roster for the United States, they're all the guys that didn't make the Olympic team that want to get on the radar. The Clayton Kellers, the Tage Thompsons, all those guys. But I think that they want Faber and Boldy and these guys to heal up because they've played a lot of hockey. The Eriksson Eks, things like that. I mean, Ek had surgery last week, but it's not a great situation for the fan, that's for sure. Especially if you're not staying up and watching.
You mentioned growing the game. One interest of mine has been I didn't enjoy the Wild until I started watching them on TV. I watched the 2021 series against the Golden Knights with my cousins. And that was when I'm like, oh, this is super
Muted
cool.
the TV broadcasters, though, I hope. Right?
And
we are growing the game on television for the Minnesota Wild TV.
That series was super exciting. Why can't the Wild or the league put in-market games on regular TV so fans within their regions can watch their games? Or can they?
Wait, yes, I don't understand.
you need FanDuel or cable to watch the Wild
Right.
play. Why can't they play on just like
Channel
regular?
45 or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
over the air. Well, part of it's rights fees because I work for FanDuel Sports Network and they pay millions of dollars for the rights to the Minnesota Wild and then spend millions of dollars on the production. They needed to be on their channel to be able to sell ads and make the money back.
So
If Channel 45 wanted to put the games on there, they could outbid FanDuel Sports Network, get the rights, and then try to sell that much advertising for it, and they'd fail miserably. And which, I mean, that's just a fact. That's the teams that have tried to put their games on over-the-air channels and make it up on ad sales have failed miserably.
there are, I mean, many teams now are starting to do the whole stream, but even still, like you see your point, you're not, I mean, the Twins, right? I mean, you're not, when you're the ones producing the games and spending that money, there's no way to make that up in just
can't make it up in ad
subscriber
sales.
fees and things like that. So
Well,
if,
subscriber fees
yeah.
is what you have to make it up. You
Right.
can't make it up in ad sales.
and but you're not getting that back in subscribe. Like there's no, if the Wild next year just, charge $20 a month on wild.com to watch, they're not going to make nearly as much as what FanDuel is paying them to put it on. So if all of a sudden in a month or two, they announce they're back on FanDuel, that's why, because they know they're getting that rights fee, Anthony.
Yeah, that's
Comes
true.
out of your pocket.
Trust me when I tell you that the whatever the fans are paying for FanDuel Sports Network
Grab some merch if you want.
is not going into my bank account.
But come on up and ask questions. Otherwise, we'll just keep on blabbering about the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I don't think everybody came here to watch. Counselor, we knew you were
Without
coming
a
up.
briefcase full of important papers.
I have the back in the old show when you come to Hell's Kitchen, I always ask about Charlie Coyle and stuff. That's what I remember about you.
Listen, I wish we had Coyle and Zucker and Nino back.
Hey, Coyle's available. You could probably get him.
Yeah. So just a couple questions. First, are any of Chisholm, Merrill, or Brazeau going to be back with us next year?
If I had to guess, Chisholm would be the likeliest. I wrote about this, I think, in the mailbag today. And the one thing I would say is we're all acting like Zeev Boyum is just going to make the team. He's got to make the team, like actually make the team.
Right.
The Wild last summer thought Riley Heidt was ready and showed that he was not. The Wild 3 years ago thought Marco Rossi was ready. He's not. The Wild thought this year Liam Ogren was ready. He's not. Just because Boyum got some games in doesn't mean that he's up to playing the rigors of an 82-game season. So if he isn't good enough to make the team and you don't have somebody like Chisholm in the background, then all of a sudden you're in the market for a defenseman if a guy like Lambos isn't available. So I think it makes sense. The question is, do you on a qualifying offer, do you want to QO him? I would if I were the Wild, but I don't know. I mean, we'll find out in late June-ish, maybe before.
No, I mean, to your point, I think the jury's out on whether Boyum and Juracek are really going to step it up next year.
Now, to Anthony, what Anthony pointed out maybe on last week's show on Merrill is, maybe they want to sign Merrill back on a one-year deal. And if that's the case, then probably they're not QOing Chisholm. So a lot of it might be based off style, what you want, how much you want to pay him. You could probably get Merrill at $1 million maybe. Chisholm would probably cost you a little more. I don't know. I mean, different players. The one thing that's handy about Derek Lynn Chisholm, to my old Brodeen point, or Middleton getting hurt, is that he could play bigger minutes. He's not really suited as your third pair guy. So if a Brodeen got hurt, at least you have Chisholm there. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. You'd have to wait to see. You'd almost have to wait to see what happens in camp to see if Boyum and Juracek are ready. Because if they are, I wouldn't mind having John Merrill as an eighth defenseman. And this year, if it proved nothing else, it proved you need at least 8 defensemen and maybe 9 with the way that the lack of durability some of the upper end defensemen the Wild have might be dealing with. But I'd be surprised if Chisholm was back. To me, it makes more sense to sign a veteran
the only
like
reason
Merrill
why I
and have
bring
him
him
be
up
your eighth guy.
is because he's a restricted free agent. The other two you mentioned are unrestricted. Yeah, Rossi's agent's Justin Brazeau's agent, so that'll be interesting. Yeah.
So obviously, what you've said is Rossi's gone essentially.
Well, I mean,
Depending,
Yeah.
but
That's
you
what
know-
one of us has said.
So there's a guy, I mean, I think we can see some of his negative issues, but there's a guy who scored 60 goals, 60 points, who
yeah.
got 2 goals in the playoffs. What exactly are their concerns? Is it just that they just don't think he's a 2C because he's too small, gets knocked off the puck? What are we going to get for Rossi if we try to trade him?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. And that's why I'm not as convinced that he'll be moved, just because I think unless the deal is right, you're not in a position where you have to move him. I think they wanted to see more from a competitive standpoint into the postseason. And I wasn't as disappointed as they were in the way Rossi played. He did have 3 points in 6 games, which is the same number that Kaprizov had in his first playoff, almost as many as Boldy had in his first 2 playoffs. And he did it while playing 5 of the 6 games on the fourth line. I think the guy has some skills, has some upside. I think they might have a different type of player in mind. That's the only reason why I could see
that's what it comes
them
down
moving.
to.
But it has to be the right deal.
Right.
It's
like
so different.
I think they
than-
feel he's a tweener. They don't look at him, especially the way they want to upgrade their center position, and they got Urov coming. I don't think they look at him as a true second line center or first line center, and I don't think they look at him as being your prototypical third line center. So a lot of it's just sort of his physical makeup, which he can't do anything about other than, his continued, work ethic that is unquestioned. But it just, what he can do is something that it seems like he can never live up to what they want him to do, if that makes sense. So the one thing I disagree is I don't think this has anything to do with the playoffs. I think that they made up their mind well before this, which is why I've been talking about it for a year, The difference also this year is while he's a Group 2 free agent, which is why they were trying to deal with it last summer or considering dealing with it last summer, is that now he's offer sheet eligible. Yes, he's ARB eligible, and he could choose to bring him to ARB or vice versa. Doesn't mean that after July 1 you can't shop. You starting June 30th. Ian Pulver's allowed to shop for an offer sheet too. And there might be a lot of teams out there that look at him as being somebody that they'd want to sign. And so that's why I think that if you move him, it's going to happen around the draft. So we will see what happens. I mean, again, when Bill Guerin says that presser last week that he wants to upgrade the center position to help out Eriksson Ek, he's almost, subconsciously pointing out, like, I'm not even considering Rossi here in the future, because why is he also not the upgraded center not helping out Rossi? So that's just it's a shame, but that's just that's the way their makeup as a team right now. So, other questions? You don't want counselor? You don't want a shirt or a hat? Give it to your wife.
If she exists. We still have yet to see her.
I've met her. So, yeah, Logan Airport.
Michael, I got to start this by saying we insulated your house.
Oh yeah, thank
Here
you.
in my home, so
And it's done. It's been
nice and toasty. I bet.
Yeah,
Nice
I
and
appreciate
cool.
it. It's holding up still.
Yep, good.
So I got these the heads of nails popping through. That's not your
That's
purview. Is that
drywall.
okay.
Nope,
All right. Cool.
different.
All right.
My question was, I read your mailbag today, and I won't put it out there so everybody has to go to your
Part
athletic.
2 Saturday.
Is there anybody out there for selfish reasons that you'd like to see the Wild pick up in the offseason, whether it be trade or free agency? I mean, you threw out a few names in the mailbag.
Yeah, I mean,
but
selfish reasons. I don't know. I mean, like, I would like to see them upgrade their winger position, but I also don't think that they should go out and give out hefty terms. So if you could bring in, I mean, it's not going to happen, but like Patrick Kane's going to probably resign in Detroit. But if you could bring him out on a 1-year deal, and Brad Marchand on a 1-year deal, even a Corey Perry on a 1-year deal, whom the Wild tried to sign a couple of years ago, I actually think that would be a decent move. Term is the big thing in this free agent class that I just don't like. I look at these names right now, and teams are locking up their guys well before it gets to UFA. So then when you get to UFA, you're sort of getting the scrap heap of,
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think this free agent class is one I'd be afraid I'd be afraid of almost every guy, how much, and that's what they're going to get. You talked about it earlier that everybody gets overpaid on July 1st. They just do. And this year, I think they might get overpaid more in years than in dollars per year. But they're still going to get more than if you just looked at it in a vacuum. What's this guy worth, term and AAV? They're all going to get more than that just because there's a limited number available.
And do you think they'd ever pull off some sort of a Rantanen type trade?
Well, I mean, that's what I think, because I think, I hate to say it like this, but the clock starts now for Bill. Okay, it just does. Like, I feel like as much as Craig Leopold loves Bill Guerin, he also is tired of the losing and wants to see this team go on a run. So there just comes a point where you just can't come back every year and lose in the first round, even though, as Anthony has pointed out many times, this division is a gauntlet. And if you're playing Dallas, Colorado, or like two of those teams might be Stanley Cup contenders, but one's going out. I mean, to lose in the first round in today's NHL is look how much more competitive the first round is every single year than this round, but I just think that because of that, because Bill knows that everybody's been waiting for this time, but yet this is the free agent class in front of him. I think the only way that he could be bold this offseason is to make some sort of big move. Now, could it be Rantanen, that type of move? I don't know. He's given up a lot of picks and prospects and things like that. So I think that the move that he would make would be more for a young guy that could build in that process. Somebody that might pay a lot of money right now, like a JJ Peterka is a good example of that. Like, I think he's going to try to pick apart Buffalo, whether it's a Tage Thompson or Peterka, somebody like that. I think that the move that I'm expecting this offseason is some sort of big trade. So, do you want spotless dishes, softer laundry, and better tasting water straight from the tap? Well, you can get all of that with a Connecticut water treatment system from Aquarius Home Services. You can have worry-free water throughout your home for less than the cost of my daily coffee habit, and trust me, that's a lot. For a limited time, you could save up to 25% on a new Connecticut system. Plus, get a free water analysis. How do you do all of this? Well, go to AquariusHomeservices.com for details. That's AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended, and don't forget to mention that Russo sent you.
Boost your savings when you open a money market account at Royal Credit Union. For a limited time, you can get a $1,250 bonus when you bring $100,000 or more in new money to open a personal or business money market account. Royal's money market accounts have no monthly maintenance fee and tiered rates, so higher balances earn more. See details and open a money market account today at rcu.org/earn-more. Minimum deposit of $100,000 required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/24/25. Insured by NCU.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
Hello.
Hey.
So first one's a comment that you guys can talk about. So this year we finally saw a healthy and composed Foligno and Hartman in the playoffs and saw what they could do. And the other one is you kind of answered part of what was going to be my second question about Peterka. Did Dylan Larkin talk himself out of Detroit?
I don't think so.
Is he a possible move?
I mean, as I wrote today in the mailbag,
I didn't read the mailbag
I
yet.
am aware.
Yeah. I might have missed it too, so I'm with you.
I mean, there's no harm in calling him, but as I also wrote in the mailbag, just to hear the laugh that Steve Yzerman gives you when, like, he used to, give Joe Smith at every one of his questions in Tampa when he covered him. But no, I mean, look, I don't, and when I say no, I'm not saying it like I know. I don't think that Steve Yzerman, just because he's had a little disagreement with Dylan Larkin publicly, is just going to trade his $8 million captain that's an absolute stud, that if you're going to win a cup, you're going to want him leading you there. Like, just because that Dylan was frustrated that they didn't make any trade deadline moves. Steve Yzerman could wrap that up by bringing him out to his country club in one afternoon and fix everything there. And they probably need to have a heart-to-heart and all that stuff. And I love the honesty of Dylan. But I don't think that is talking your way out of Detroit. But I think what it does show you is that players in Buffalo, whether it's Rasmus Dahlin or Tage Thompson, Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond and these guys in Detroit, they are tired of losing every single year. You want to talk about pain as a fan. It's not being a Wild fan. It's being a Sabres fan or a Red Wings fan. And every year you're
right. They haven't been in the play.
Exactly.
It's been forever in those markets.
Somebody, I think, tweeted that it was like 2 popes ago that the Sabres last made the playoffs, So, by the way, an American Pope.
Yeah. Very exciting.
From Chicago. I almost had this like this when I heard that he was an American Pope and watched all these like documentary, news documentaries on him. I almost pictured him like calling up Ditka's that after, hey, that reservation I got tonight, I need to cancel. I just became the Pope. Anyway, but you know what I mean? Like, I just don't buy, but if you're Bill Guerin, you might as well call. Like, what if you can? What if you could trade Rossi and Ogren and first for Dylan Larkin? We know that he loves Dylan Larkin. Guy's 26 years old. Like, yeah, you might as well make the call. I just don't think that he talked his way out of it. And what was your other question? Oh, I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that what they saw from Ryan Hartman, I think, is a different story. What they saw from Hartman is more like the player they saw, 3 years ago when he scored 34 goals. It's nothing they hadn't seen from these guys before. It's what they saw from Foligno all season long. He was terrific all year, and really was terrific 2 years ago when he lost his mind for a week and a half in the Dallas series. And that was the exception rather than the rule with him throughout his entire time here. And for Hartman, I think it was more of an important playoff series. I think he put himself back in the good graces of this organization and put himself back on the map to be an integral part of this team moving forward. And I think John Hines said it so many times throughout the series. This is the Ryan Hartman we've been waiting to see. It's the Ryan Hartman we need. It's the Ryan Hartman the Wild need moving forward. And the type of player that he was in that series is the type of player that can for sure be a top 9 player on a really good team and maybe even a top 6 player on a regular basis.
You mentioned him as your first,
Yeah, it was just because
it is kind of interesting because we all are looking at like he saved himself here in Minnesota, but the other point is maybe he showed all these other teams.
And that was the reason his name popped into my head. But as I said, with both of those guys, to me, I think there's very little chance that either one of the two we mentioned. It was just if you had to pick one somewhere on the roster that hadn't been really talked about, he might be the guy just because maybe somebody saw something in the playoffs that they loved and thought he'd be a perfect fit for our team, and therefore they make a call to Billy. I don't know how likely that is. I don't think the Wild are out shopping him by any means.
I agree. Joe Smith wrote a really good story on Volstad a couple days ago, Anthony, where he talked openly about his terrible season and how he knows he has to have a big summer and all this stuff. And the Wild are obviously still looking at him as he is going to be Philip Gustafsson's backup next year. I think the big question is what kind of number 3 can you get just in case he's not the guy? Because you're not signing just a regular NHL backup that's going to be like, yeah, I'll be in Iowa, and if you need me, you're going to have to probably get a really good, I hate using the word tweener because I use it too much, but somebody that's probably not your NHL backup, but somebody that like an Andrew Hammonds. Remember him when they put him in Iowa and they would call him up every now and then, like
Hamburglar.
Yeah, Hamburglar. So, but
there has to be a veteran guy in the mix for sure. But I think
we forget that he's 22. But do you still believe that Wallstedt has that ability?
Well, I didn't really watch him at all this year, so it's hard to judge. But yes, would be the short answer. I think
it is interesting.
He's had too much success for too many years to say that in 1 year he can undo all of that. I think maybe he has the same kind of eye opener season that Gus had a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and Gus came back a different goaltender when challenged. Maybe Wallstedt will do the same.
I mentioned I talked to Iowa coach Brett McClain today for a story that I'm writing on Ogren next week, and something I'm putting in on Juracek and Mailbag Part 2. I went from almost I almost said I was about to say 2 in French, and then somehow I switched to Spanish and realized that I'm not trilingual. So anyway, but like the one thing here is, so Ogren minors work for him this year. Like I think I figured it out today. 21 points in his last 19 games. It's almost a point a game player. Every time he went back there, Brett said that it would take him like 2 games to like adjust to being like get rid of the disappointment of being sent back. Where the last time it's just he came out firing. I remember his last game in Minnesota, he scored that huge goal and then had to be sent down the next day because they got guys back. But it feels like that he's going to be somebody that we could expect to make the team next year and be a middle 6 guy. And then Juracek, Juracek had the lacerated spleen at the end of the year. Obviously, he didn't have the greatest year in Iowa, but he likes him. He said that he's extremely coachable. He's somebody, when you give up the haul that they gave up, you've got to figure out a way to play him next year if he deserves so in camp. You can't have Zach Bogosian blocking him, because right now it feels like Bogo's kind of blocking Juracek. Juracek's definitely blocking David Spacek. It just feels like, they've got to figure out a way to get him playing.
I just hate the term blocking. I mean, you don't get blocked. You get outplayed.
Get blocked.
So if Bogosian outplays Juracek, then he's not getting blocked. He's being outplayed. And Juracek is...
Let me just, but again, I look back at those early Wild years where you had Parisi and Suter and Stahl and Koivu, and these guys were all in the number 1 power play. There was no chance at the beginning of their careers for Coyle and Granlund and Zucker and all these guys. Maybe Granlund's the wrong example because he eventually wound up there. But they, never got that ability to maybe become the players that they could have been, because they were always second unit and, second,
but
third
they were
line.
never better than those guys.
But a lot of times
Granlund was, and therefore he landed there.
I don't think that's true. Sometimes when you sign $98 million deals, that rules the roost. It does.
Somewhat. But I mean, do you really think Zach Parisi was going to get outplayed by Charlie Coyle on a power play?
I guess my point is that I don't care if Zach Bogosian looks like the second coming of freaking Charlie McAvoy in camp next year. David Juracek needs to get ice time next season.
But if he's not better than Zach Bogosian, then are you really going to say, okay, we're in a playoff race, but this guy someday is going to be better than Zach Bogosian, so we're going to play him? I mean, there's a fine line.
One guy's the future and the other guy's the past.
No, there's no question that one guy's could be a part of your future. We don't know that for sure
he better
yet.
be.
But, I mean,
you have a first, second, third. As I wrote today, they gave up more than the compensation to sign a $9 million player in an offer sheet.
Once you've done that, it's a sunken cost. Like, you've already spent it. It's gone, no matter what this guy does.
But as you and I both know, there's pressure.
Well, you were just the one about 20 minutes ago saying that they made a trade for Marc-Andre Fleury and therefore played him instead of Cam Talbot in the playoffs, even though Talbot was better.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what you gave up to get a guy. What matters is who's the better player right now.
And my point is that the past history shows that they freaking made the mistake then. And I'm not trusting that they're going to fix that mistake next year.
Right. And I'm saying that it won't be a mistake. If Juracek is better than Bogosian, he'll play. And if he's not, he shouldn't, and he won't. But if they're close, then you play the guy that's a part of your future. There's no question.
I just think that coming into camp, you've got to have one guy identified as your 7th D, and that needs to be the guy with the beard.
I think that's what they will do. I think they'll come in giving Buyam and Juracek every chance to they'll come in not saying it verbally, but saying these guys are in our top 6 unless they play their way out. And if Juracek plays his way out, that's on him. This won't be that Zach Bogosian came to camp and played like Charlie McAvoy. That isn't going to happen. They know what Bogosian is, but if Juracek comes to camp and doesn't play better than that, then he shouldn't be in your top 6.
It's going to be really interesting with
How
Juracek.
many games you want to lose to say that, yeah, but this guy someday might be better?
Well, at some point you got to play these guys. If you're willing, like, I guess, like when you give up the amount of haul that they give up for Juracek, knowing that Boyan was coming and knowing you just signed Faber to an $8.5 million deal, they're paying Faber $8.5 million now to never be on the number 1 unit. And they just gave up the price of an immense amount of capital to get Juracek, and he's never going to be a power play guy here. I guess it just seems like I don't know, what's the plan there? Like you better hope then that David Juracek and Brock Faber turn into the most elite penalty killers ever. And we know that Faber hasn't become that yet. So there just comes
Juracek's unlikely to become that.
Yeah, well, he's not going to be a number 1 power play guy. So I just, I guess I'm confused by some of the moves, So we'll see.
Yeah, guys have to earn it.
Yeah. Oh, they earn it. You would have had Ant in the freaking G League or something until he earned it.
He makes more shots than the guy next to him,
Yeah.
so he's going to play.
Yeah. Well, Ant's a 20-year-old prodigy, but he's got to earn it. And Slow-Mo's got to play ahead of him until Ant earns it.
I don't even know who Slow-Mo is.
I know that. Question.
Changing the
real
subject
guy?
a little bit.
Isn't that the guy's nickname? Slow-Mo. You see? I'm a Wolves
I haven't
aficionado
watched.
now.
I haven't seen much.
Now that the majority of the
You're going to have a
buyouts,
heart attack when they are parading down Hennepin, the Wolves,
I
over your
will
precious
absolutely
Wild.
not. I won't be watching the parade, but I will not have a heart
You're
attack.
going to be out there in the middle of it on a float.
now
By the way,
that
the Wolves are winning the NBA championship. Telling you right now. How great will that be when it's the Knicks versus the freaking Wolves after that giant trade? Tibbs versus Finch. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have to figure out a way to cover that.
might be the only Minnesota sports worth watching at that point.
Yes, exactly.
Now that the buyouts are mostly over, do you think the sentiment around Zach and Ryan will change as time goes on, or do you always think there'll be kind of like a bitterness to that?
I hope it changes. They didn't do this. Like they didn't buy themselves out. They signed.
Ryan did cross-check Kirill in the ribs.
Oh, yeah.
So that,
yeah. Ryan's he's a hard player. That's a cool shirt. Look at the cuffs on the, we got to get some of those back in the merch van. Guys, I didn't even know we made those worst seats in the house shirts. How old is that shirt?
Maybe like a year and a half.
Wow.
I think you made that.
We got to find that. Yeah. I didn't know we
I swear
had
I'm not
those.
plagiarizing. This is legal.
I really am not aware of anything that we have.
That is not a shock, dude. That is not a shock.
All right,
By the
then
way, if you read my mailbag, you made a cameo in it today.
Really?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Freaking shot and a half right across the bow. And I put it because I knew you weren't going to read it.
Well, perfect. I'll have another reason to skip it.
Yeah.
one last thing.
Answer Leighton's question there.
My brother's a massive
yeah,
Patrick Kane fan.
Like, do you think that, at some point we
the
got to,
Parisi Suter
Yeah.
question. I think it depends. I think Zach Parisi probably will be eventually looked at as what he was, just one of the hardest working players that the Wild had, and a gifted scorer, and really for the most part a good guy. And Suter, I don't know if he'll ever overcome the bad guy, the villain reputation, because I think a lot of the perception is that he was the reason the two of them had to get bought out, because of he was stirring the pot behind the scenes. And then the cross check you mentioned, I don't think a lot of Wild fans loved the way he played after he left here. He hasn't had really good things to say about the Wild. Parisi's just kind of been quiet. So I don't know. I think Parisi more likely than Suter can be rectified, but we'll find out.
I'd have to personally agree there, but
the one thing that I do hope fans do realize is that they worked their ass off for this organization. Like, they played well here. It's not their fault that they didn't win a cup.
No, and they changed the organization.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this 11 playoff appearances in 13 years. That started with the year they arrived.
100%.
And, that they weren't
And
making
a
the
lot of
playoffs
things
that
happened-
often prior
yeah.
to that. They had made
Yeah.
the playoffs 3 times in the history of the franchise prior to that.
And a lot of things happened that affected this team during that tenure that you had no control of. A global pandemic, a work stoppage the year before that affected that stalled the cap. There's one other big one. Expansion that caused them suddenly nobody knows how to conduct themselves with Vegas. And I think Chuck Fletcher, if he was here, would say, I screwed this up, but he's all of a sudden to protect this guy, he's given up Alex Tuck and forced them to take Hala, and all this stuff that nobody expected in their term that affected the depth of the team, their ability to spend and put pieces around them. And so, unfortunately, a lot of things affected the Wild the last 10 years, affected everybody else, but the Wild especially. Cap recapture. I mean, all this stuff. The Wild don't buy him out if that retroactive cap recapture is in. And we're seeing right now with Parise being out of the league and retiring early, the Wild would have been absolutely slaughtered by cap recapture, so.
All right, one last thing. My little brother's a big Patrick Kane fan. What was the dollar amount and term that would pry him out of Detroit and away from every other contender who he probably has a better chance to win a cup on?
Yeah, I think he's resigning there. I think he wants to resign there. He said there's mutual interest. I don't know if it gets to the point that you could even offer him that dollar amount. My guess is he's going to resign there at 1 times 3 or 1 times 3.5 or something like that. He could still play. He had a good year. The other reason why, as I wrote today in the mailbag, that I don't think that they're going to want to let him go is that the only thing that was remotely adequate about Detroit this year was their power play, and he was a huge, huge part of that. Everything else about their game sucked, including their goaltending with a guy that I mentioned earlier.
They did get a little spike when they changed coaches where it looked like they might be a legit playoff contender. But then in a conference where everybody tried to miss the playoffs, they still couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Which is really disappointing. I mean, if you're Detroit, you have to be wondering, how in the world did we miss this year?
Yeah. But I think Kane would be perfect here. But I just don't. And I think the Wild, if he was suddenly available, would be very intrigued by it. I mean, I haven't asked anybody, but I would assume, because I think there is a lot of respect from Bill Guerin to him. Now, there's always there's always hurt feelings too. I know that Patrick wanted to be part of that Four Nations roster. He didn't make it. Would that ever, if he got to free agency, would he look at Bill Guerin like, I'm not freaking returning his call? You never know, right? That's just sometimes the price of doing business. A couple more minutes left in the show. Any final questions? It's got to be. You all trekked out here in a tornado that Anthony didn't even know about, and you don't even come armed with questions.
It looks sunny out now.
Yeah, I know. It's super nice. What else? I mean, so your gut, if it's Florida, Carolina, let's see, is Carolina up right now? Tied 1-1. If it's Florida, Carolina in that series, I think Florida wins.
You have to take Florida. I love the way Carolina's been playing in the playoffs, and the one thing they'd have working in their favor is maybe a little less wear and tear. Florida's had a couple emotional series, even though the Tampa series was shorter than I expected it to be, where Carolina really hasn't been pushed yet by either New Jersey or Washington.
Totally agree.
And that's actually one of the reasons why I think Edmonton's got a shot, even though I think either one of Dallas or Winnipeg, in my opinion, would be I'm assuming it's going to be Dallas. I think Dallas is the better club, but Dallas has had to go through Colorado and Winnipeg, where Edmonton had played a very different series against LA and then a short series against Vegas.
Jake Ottinger has been unbelievable. It's really cool to see, especially his big contract extension kicks in next year. You got to get that lower, Mike.
I'm vertically challenged. You got to get it low here.
Yeah, exactly.
Could have just brought a chair over here. You could have stood on a chair.
I could stand on it, yeah.
You're not allowed to ask questions if you're not this tall.
Then I better go back to my seat, huh? So,
just so everybody knows, before you how you tweet out how rude and offensive Anthony is, they do know each other. Yeah. Ken comes on all our Russo LaPanta trips, so even though that was a very rude joke to just a random person, they know each other. Yep, so he's allowed.
So So out of curiosity, I mean, we were just talking about the playoffs, and what in the world is going on with our Vezina Trophy winner who can't seem to stop a puck in a big game?
I don't know is the answer, except for the fact that this is not the first time this has happened to him in the playoffs.
3 years in a row.
This is 3 years in a row where he has played this way.
I think he's got it around his neck, right?
Yeah, it might be, and it really, when you think about it, if you would have said going into that first round series, he's going to get pulled in all 3 games in St. Louis, and yet you're still going to win the series, nobody would have believed you. And I don't know. It's really bizarre because he has not looked anywhere close to the player he was in the regular season in this playoff.
Well, he certainly played himself out of number 1 in the Olympics.
Yeah, maybe. I
mean, I don't know how you don't.
I don't know
pick
how you
Ottinger.
wouldn't start Ottinger, but you never know.
All right.
Yep. Hey.
Hi. Do you think by the year 2028 they'll have won the Stanley Cup?
Somebody, my mailbag part 2, somebody's like, I'm 67 now. I plan to live till 97. Am I going to see a cup? I'm like, I don't know. What would be a good punchline for that? Because I want to end the mailbag too with that. What would that? Somebody come up with a good joke for me to end, and you'll know you did it. Answer that question.
So 28, we're talking 3 more seasons, right? 25. So yeah. In the next 3 years, it's such an impossible thing to peg because I think they'll be one of the 3 or 4 teams to beat in the next 3 years. But every year there are probably 6 teams that would fall into that category, and only one of them wins. One of them stays healthy through the playoffs. One of them gets the big save at the big time. One of them gets the bounces and the breaks. To say, will the Wild be that team one of the 3 years? I mean, the odds would tell you no, but I think they'll be one of the teams to beat in the next 3 years.
It has to be the next 3 because then there's going to be expansion. So then there's going to be 34 teams and 36. Now it's like, to your point on the odds, I mean, the only thing I would say is I really hope so because, for all of you's sake, it is this fan base so deserves a long playoff run. And it's hard, especially the way the parity in this league and how good teams are. It is just so hard, but this fan base has been so supportive and they deserve it. And take it from somebody that's covered 24 or 5 Stanley Cup finals. There is nothing like that. Like even last year, as much as when Edmonton won Game 6, I'm like, I cannot freaking believe I got to go back to South Florida after 2.5 weeks of traveling back and forth between Edmonton and Florida. Like that atmosphere in that Game 7 was incredible. And that's stuff that you just don't get, in just even a first round series. So I do hope that fans here get to witness it because look how much fun everybody's having with the Wolves right now, exception of Anthony.
Well, that's true. But let's also keep in mind that for 20 years, the Wolves were literally the worst team in the NBA. Over a 20-year span, they had the worst record in the league. And that's what it took to finally make a couple runs. Now, the 2 runs have been fun. A couple runs to the conference final for sure. But the odds thing is in the NHL, it is such a parity league, and it is so driven by that. And I was just speaking at a breakfast last week that if all things are equal, which they are in the NHL, you should only make the playoffs every other year. There's 32 teams and 16 make the playoffs. You should advance to the second round once every 4 years, to the conference finals once every 8, and win it once every 32. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could be really good, but to really look at it and say, well, we've never won a cup. Well, you should only win one every 32 years if all the things are equal. And that's what it really is in the NHL. I mean, not that, no, I know. I mean, but you should make the finals once every 16. If it's just, that's the way the league is built. It's such a parity league. It's different than the NBA. You can win with one superstar. You can't do that in the NHL.
Yeah, no doubt. Did you just lastly see the shot that the Wild took from the LA Chargers yesterday? There's no way you did because you've been chasing around a golf ball for 50
how would
hours.
I know that?
Yeah.
The LA Chargers took a shot at the Wild?
In the NFL, so in the NFL, they do the schedule releases and every team does some fun social media thing. And theirs was a Minecraft video where they went to every market that the Chargers were going to play last year. And when they got to Minnesota, they had a banner that you had to zoom in on, and it was a wild banner that said 8-time quarterfinal runner-up from 2015 to 2025. I mean, how clever is that?
That's pretty good.
and that's and I know that, like, I'm sure the Wild didn't love me broadcasting this out to the world, but I thought what was hilarious about it is like, and you know how many incredible ad agencies we have in Minnesota. It almost feels like the ad agency had to be from here, because for you to know so specifically that they've lost 8 times in the first round and throw that on a banner that everybody makes fun the Wild don't have, you know, the only thing funnier would have been if it would have been like on their #1 fan banner. Like that would have been actually kind of clever too, to really make fun of them. So perfect way to end the show. But thanks everybody for coming out to Elsie's. Incredible that in the middle of a tornado storm, the storm of the century that Anthony didn't know about.
What's your favorite storm of the century story? The time that you parked your rental car underneath a tree in San Jose just in case it hailed?
Was that the one? No, I thought I parked in like the middle of the parking lot because I didn't want it to be under a tree just in case it fell on the car.
Well, I know there was one
and then
time,
it didn't sprinkle.
Yeah.
So
that's right. One time you didn't want to drive your rental car because it was the storm of the century.
And
it didn't
that sounds
rain.
like that would be something
And
I
it
would
didn't
definitely
rain.
do. Yeah. God, I love that MRI that I was in.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear the details of those results.
I'll send it to you. All right, thanks to our incredible sponsors. Thanks for coming out. Definitely pay attention to Talk North social media and also my social media. We know that Anthony won't tweet it. On when our next live show will be. It'll be sometime in June. We'll either have 1 or 2. Thanks to Aquarius and for joining us at the Aquarius Home Services studio. Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Clamshell Beach Resorts, Onyx Maps, Giggly THC Beverages, Twill in the Edina Galleria, and Royal Credit Union. Thanks, everybody.
So much